Hello, Danny B. How you doing? Okay. And with that, I believe we are live everywhere. Um, hello, Andrew Stevens. How you doing? Well, good morning, everybody. Happy Friday, March 28th, last Friday of March. I apologize for the technical issues last week while I was traveling. I really tried. I did my best, but the Wi-Fi and where I was staying was not very happy with what I was doing, I guess. So it was not meant to be. But we got a lot of great questions about entrepreneurship, which is a topic that I could talk forever about. So it's probably a good thing. I love entrepreneurship and everything about it, and it's what I've devoted my life to. And so it's really fun to see all of the excitement around it and all of the questions that you had about it. And I think that for me at least, one thing I've been reflecting on a lot recently is, entrepreneurship is really just a way to really build and craft a life for yourself, right? I mean, it's having the agency to go out and build something, create something that is unique to you as an individual and unique to what you want out of life. I mean, and I think that's what makes entrepreneurship so fun, because it can take so many different mediums, and there's just like an unlimited way, unlimited number of ways that you can actually practice it. And I think where people get hung up so often is trying to copy or replicate what somebody else is doing, rather than kind of figuring out their own path that is unique to them and unique to what it ultimately your skill sets are and what you want out of life, because everybody is built differently and we all have different needs out of life. And I think that a lot of times we kind of see what other people have and maybe try to copy that or chase that, and then people find unhappiness in doing it and don't really understand why. And it's because they don't understand themselves well enough to really know what it is that they need out of life to be happy. And I think a lot of times that's why you see people that maybe make a lot of money and do these big things, and then they find emptiness at the end of it, and it's because they were really chasing the wrong things to begin with. And I think before you start any entrepreneurial journey, having the time and really the self-awareness to understand what you're looking to achieve, like what actually would make you happy, like what goal is it that you're really locked in on. That is the key, I think, to ultimately being successful and finding something that's going to where you're going to find fulfillment and happiness. At least that is my experience, and that is what entrepreneurship or really life is about. And I think entrepreneurship is just a manifestation of what's going on in the rest of your life, or how you think about the world. And entrepreneurship is your way to go out and have and create that own unique impact that is uniquely yours. And I think that that oftentimes is not found in copying what somebody else is doing. And so having creativity within that is super important. But with that, I think that we will make we will start taking some questions and see where that takes us. Danny B's got to go because he's making a Supermarine Spitfire. I have absolutely no idea what that means, but good luck in whatever that is, and I hope that there's nothing untoward about that. Michael, or actually LXH29, Michael, please get David to answer these questions. If you are launching a new product today, what's the number one strategy you'd use to dominate the market fast? How do you stand out from competitors, especially when there's always cheaper alternative when you're starting out? Yes, I actually remember this question from last week, and I started to answer it, and I don't know how much of it was actually got through, or how much got cut off. But I think that you're kind of asking the wrong question, and I really worry a little bit about your strategy based on your question, and I'll explain why. Um, you know, if you're going to enter into a market in any type of business, whether this be a physical products business or a service-based business, or a coaching business or agency business, whatever business it is, you need to be able to answer to yourself first, what is the reason that this business exists, and why am I the unique person that is destined to make this successful or make this work? Like, what are the unique qualities that you as a person and you as a business have, that are going to differentiate you within the market? Because ultimately, you need to be able to differentiate and define that differentiation, to yourself first before you're able to go out and articulate that value proposition to a customer. And this all comes down to offering value, because if you want to be successful in business or in life, then you need to be able to bring a tangible value consistently, to other people, because that is ultimately how you're going to create value in a business and in life. And I think so many people enter into a business, really when they're entering into a scheme. It's like they found a scheme, like a way that they can, extract money from somebody without maybe doing a ton of work, or because they have like this unique hookup that they're able to buy a product uniquely cheaply for a little while, and make some money flipping it, or whatever the case might be. People have all of these schemes that may make the money in the short term, but that's not really a business. It's not something that's sustainable. It's not something that's scalable. It's not something that is likely to stand the test of time. And it's like, how do you, dominate a market fast, or when people are offering cheaper alternatives and this kind of stuff is, well, the first step is you have to be able to, articulate why you're differentiated, like why, what your unique product or service deserves to be, scaling fast and deserves to be in the market. Well, what is your differentiator? And until you can answer that question, you should not start any business. You shouldn't, you shouldn't even start until you're able to answer that, because it's going to take an unrelenting obsession over time for you to be able to break in and to really grow and scale a business. And if you cannot articulate to yourself why that business exists or what your unique value proposition is, then it's a very low probability you're going to be able to go out and convince, the marketplace at scale that you're differentiated. And so, I think that this is why so often, I encourage young entrepreneurs to go out and get some experience before they commit to doing, to a certain path, because a lot of times people are just looking to make money, right? Like that is like their why when they get into the business. Like there's no, like, it's really not a lot of times thought out in any more detail than that. It's just like, oh, I want to make some money. This is a way I can make a little bit of money, or I think maybe I can make some money here, and I'm going to go do it. And that's the extent of the thought process. And invariably, what ends up happening is, that they end up, flaming out. And like the worst thing that can happen is you get into a business or you get into a scheme that makes you a lot of money quickly. And so you're like, oh, I think, then you think, oh, I know what I'm doing. And then over time, what you find is it starts to, get competed away or no longer works. And then you're back to the drawing board and you have to do it again and again and again. And this was an experience that I had very early on in entrepreneurship, by the way. I've talked about it a couple of different places, but when I first got into, or I tried so many different schemes over the years, especially when I was younger. Like one of them was affiliate marketing. I was big in the affiliate marketing world. And I did a lot of, kind of scammy, quite frankly, affiliate marketing techniques, that, I would find one that would work for a while. I'd make, what looked like a lot of money doing it. And then like the next month, it would no longer work. And then have to go and reinvent myself over and over and over again. That is very tiring and it's kind of scary, right? Because like, let's say you're making a good income for a little while, and then like, Google changes their algorithm, or the scheme you were playing no longer works, or the affiliate, commissions get cut in half, which happened like on the Amazon, affiliate commissions over COVID. If any of you are in that game, you remember that. Like all of those things are very scary, and that kind of taught me that when you're doing those schemes, they're not really a business, they're a scheme. And like I think you have to learn to differentiate between the two. And that was the genesis for me ultimately creating FilterBuy, because I wanted to find a product that I could, offer value, manufacture at scale, deliver to the end user at scale, as cheaply, as anyone else. And ultimately that led me down the path of building a sustainable business that, I believe will stand the test of time and will continue to be able to grow and expand over decades, because it's a sustainable business and a sustainable business model in a consumable product that people are likely to continue to need. So that is how I'm able to articulate, my value, my reason for existing as a business. And once I got comfortable with that, then I was able to commit to that over a decade long plus period. Like now I'm already 12 years in and I'm still committed to that. Right. It's not that you wake up and you have that overnight success as it sounds like you're looking for. It takes years to be able to build something meaningful with that framework. But that, at the same time, is the only way that you're able to build something that is truly sustainable over a long period of time. And that's what I'm way more interested in seeing you do, or seeing any young entrepreneur do, is wait until they really have the passion and the key insight on a particular market or a product or whatever it is that is uniquely them, that they believe, that they really see that differentiated value in, and then go all in on that over a long period of time and build it with a long-term time horizon. And I think that is really where I would be focusing. And just like one aside on this, because I see this a lot right now, you know, the world is changing more quickly than ever, undeniably. Like if any of you, or follow what's happening in the AI space and all these things that are happening, week in, week out, like in the last couple of days about the image, the new image creator with that ChatGPT or OpenAI came out with. I mean, it's absolutely mind blowing. Like if you showed somebody this 3 years ago, their head would have exploded, right? And now, like we're getting stuff like this. Basically every single week, it feels like. So the world is just changing more rapidly than ever. And what that means to me as an entrepreneur, or what I think you need to be thinking about if you're starting a business, is what are the businesses and skills and whatnot that are likely to stand the test of time. And I think that so much of the kind of internet guru entrepreneurial space in the last 20 years has been kind of this short-term focus. And like you have so many SaaS products, so many agencies being built, these types of things that, in my opinion, are not likely to be very sustainable over the coming years, because you're going to see so much disruption and so much change is happening because of what's coming with AI and all the things related to it. And so if I were starting a business today, I actually would be thinking about, like, what are the things that are unlikely to be impacted by that, or what are the things that I can actually build that will allow me to use those types of tools to enhance my business and enhance my competitive advantage. And like I think my air filter business is a good example of that. It's like I think that we're going to be able to use AI and all the technology and all the marketing tools and all this kind of stuff to our advantage over a long period of time, make us more competitive, help us to grow our moat, and so it's an enhancer for us. But there are so many businesses and business models right now where it's a huge threat, I think, and I would definitely be wary of starting something in that, even if the short-term money was good. I mean, I think that the tendency oftentimes is to get into that kind of find these schemes that work for a while, and that's great. And a lot of gurus will make videos about it, or maybe charge you money for a course to show you how to do it, and it works for a few months, maybe even a few years, but ultimately what you realize is that it gets competed out and it's not really a long-term sustainable business. And I would really encourage any young entrepreneur to be thinking about what a long-term sustainable business looks like. That being said, I think in the next few weeks, I'm going to publish a video on AI and how I would actually be using AI if I was a young entrepreneur. And the one caveat I will give you to all of this is, if I was just starting out and I really didn't know what my long-term competitive niche was going to be, or where I was going to focus, I would, probably learn the skills to be able to sell my services to businesses that need it around the AI. And there's so many skills that are very valuable right now, that if you can position yourself to be able to help with, whether it be a marketing function or SEO function, or any of these building websites, all these types of things that AI is democratizing and allowing people that are both skilled and entrepreneurial to go out and kind of build little businesses, selling those skills to other businesses that need it. I think that's a great way to start your entrepreneurial journey, because it allows you to actually build those skills while getting paid to do it, while getting also insight into how other businesses are run. But I would very quickly, or I would always be thinking about, hey, what is going to be my angle for building a long-term sustainable business out of this, where I can use this kind of skill set that I built to build this, longer term, business, business using those skills. And so I think it's a great way to start for people, but it shouldn't be the end game when you're actually thinking about building a business. But I'm going to put out a whole video about it. It's something I've actually been thinking a lot about recently, and I think it's worth thinking about. Okay, what's next, Michael? Hey, David, love your content. I'm working on my first e-com product by adding a USP to a proven seller and building a brand about it. Currently prototyping. Curious what you think of this approach. USP. Do you know what a USP means? Unique sales proposition. A unique. Okay, by a unique sales proposition, according to Michael. So that makes sense. It definitely can be a good approach. I like differentiating. You want to figure out how you're going to differentiate yourself, right? And it sounds like that's what you're doing, and I think that's super smart. The question you need to be asking yourself, and only, you would answer this. I have no idea what your product is. Is it a sustainable long-term moat that you're building around that, right? Or are people just going to be able to copy you? And so much of the e-commerce space that I see, is easily copied. Like the kind of nuanced thing that I talk to big companies about this a lot recently, actually, and it's just fascinating. Like I have said this to the world so many times, and even people in my own industry do not internalize this or understand it, and so it's just fascinating to me. But we're in the logistics business, not the air filter business, and I say that all the time, and I don't think people really understand what that means. But like if you were to break down the economics of our business, we're manufacturing a product for, call it $2 on average, and selling it for $11 on average. Unfortunately, that's not just profit margin. If that was the case, then it'd easily get competed out, and I would no longer have a business. And what it is because we've invested over the years, millions and millions of dollars reinvested from our business to building the infrastructure that allows us to deliver that product from our manufacturing facility to the end user without having to use distribution like an Amazon distribution or a Walmart distribution or whatever to actually get that product to the end user, right? Like that is the actual crux of the competitive advantage and the competitive moat that we as a business have built in a otherwise fairly commodity product of an air filter, right? Like that is the that is like our unique proposition, and that's very difficult for someone to go out and replicate it. I see people trying all the time, and people think, oh, I'm just going to go out and copy. Like, how hard can it be? And then they're not really thinking through the actual mechanism from from that manufacturing process to getting it to the end customer, and all of the infrastructure that it takes to do it. And so that was the unique insight I have, and I devoted the last 12 years and continuing to actually investing in that infrastructure and building that sustainable moat, right? So that was how I thought about the business and how I still think about the business. And I'm constantly thinking through, like, what are the things that I can do to expand my moat, expand our competitive space, in the marketplace. And so that's how I think about a unique selling proposition. If that makes any sense. And so, I think you just need to be very honest with yourself about, like, what is the unique selling proposition of your product? And is it something that is defensible? Because if it's something that's easily copied, then it's not really going to be unique for very long, right? And that's what's kind of tough about it. It's a very competitive space. If it's working, and anybody can see it, then, like, the more successful you are, the more knockoffs you're going to have, and all of a sudden it's not going to be nearly as unique as it was. There are so many different ways to build a competitive moat, and some of them are more obvious than others, but I think that you need to, before you really go all in on something, you need to be able to articulate to yourself what that competitive moat for you is going to be. And I cannot overstate the importance of that enough. And I think that people so often enter in businesses without really understanding that. And they kind of get lazy and just want to kind of copy what other people are doing, because it's so much easier, or seemingly so much easier that way. But you end up finding that these things get competed away. And I know that that may not be super fun advice to hear, because to go out and build a truly competitive moat, it's really hard, takes a lot of time, and takes a unique insight in the beginning, and then a commitment to kind of building that out over time. And then, like, it doesn't really get any easier, right? The bigger you get, the more people that want to try to replicate what you're doing, or maybe attacking you in different ways from that competitive moat, and you have to continue to build and innovate. Which that is what's going to differentiate the kind of long-term winners versus the losers. But that's honestly what it takes. So I guess the very short answer to your question would be, definitely a strategy that can work, so long as your unique selling proposition is ultimately defensible over a long period of time and you have a plan around that. So if you have that, then I think it's a absolutely great way to go. If not, then maybe I would go back to the drawing board. So that would be where I would go.
TikTok or stay here?
Well, somebody on TikTok just gave me the number one grifter gifter badge. I think they said grifter badge. I was going to be a little offended, but the gifter badge. Okay, well, I appreciate that. Actually, okay. Next question, Michael. You can take the next question. Anime Inside English. I recently started a painting services business, and it's going well. What's the biggest lesson you've learned in building a successful business? Well, I always hate these questions. Like, what's the one thing, right? I mean, I wish I could distill everything into one thing. I mean, if I had to pick one word, it would ultimately be focus, right? I mean, I just kind of articulated very clearly what our unique proposition is, that's actually been the key insight that has allowed me to build this business. I mean, I think if somebody were to really unpack it and really wanted to understand it, you would realize what I just told you is the key insight, the key differentiator that has made Filter by what it is today. And I think relentless focus around that is the number one insight that I would give to anybody in business. Is like, once you realize what business you're in, what your unique proposition is going to be in, then being focused on that and expanding that over time is really the key. And I very much am a fan in this day and age of the service businesses. I think that there's so much opportunity within that. It's one of the reasons why I'm putting more and more focus on our HVAC service business, because I think that it's something that is likely to stand the test of time, and I'm very interested in building a brand in that space over a long period of time. And I think the services businesses are great because it's not likely to be replaced by AI or a robot painting people's homes anytime soon. May happen in the future, but I think over the next 20 plus years, you're probably pretty safe in that world. So I think it's it's definitely a great business to start. I think you can definitely differentiate in a modern world where my experience and belief, and we're kind of seeing it within the HVAC service world, that there's so many like smaller companies that are in a lot of these spaces that sometimes have maybe shady sales practices, or they're not super organized, or not consistent on pricing, all this kind of stuff. And the younger generation, generally, they don't want to negotiate, don't want to have to worry about the quality of their service, don't want to have to worry about somebody not showing up, this kind of stuff. So if you can offer a consistent, high quality service at a fair price and be transparent, and make it easy, and have like the right kind of communication and technology tools, and this kind of stuff, you will find that you can differentiate and build a business. And I think the nice thing about like painting services is you can be hyper local, right? And so like what I would encourage somebody in your situation potentially do is to focus on your unique value proposition, and then also focus on your location. Be like hyper targeted on your location. It's like, I'm going to own this zip code, for instance, and be like the the company in this zip code that people think of when they think of high quality painting services, and then let kind of the word of mouth and the branding building within that zip code, really get you off the ground, and then you slowly start to expand the zip codes that you do that with. And I think that you can definitely create your own unique value proposition and your reputation over a period of time if you stay focused on that and committed to that. And so that would be kind of the best advice I think that I would give to somebody that was in your that was in your situation. But I think it's a great lots of potential in that business. And I think that the key over time is going to be able to be differentiating yourself and then kind of building the competitive moats around your business in your local area, and that over time will lead to success. So I wish you the best of luck on that venture. What's next, Michael? Anor, I have a question. On the side, I'm a DJ who wants to pivot to weddings more, but my concern is that will be a one-man show and I will not be able to scale it. Should I use my earnings to invest in a new scalable business? By the way, I work a 9 to 5 during the days. It all depends on what you want out of life, right? I mean, if you want to build a super scalable business and that is going to make you a multimillionaire, then yes, you probably need to pivot into a different business if that is your goal. If your goal is just to earn some side income and maybe you want to continue your 9 to 5 and you want to, but you also want to be able to retire, then maybe what I would do is continue my 9 to 5, continue to do your DJs as a hobby, take all the money from your DJ earnings, put it into a Wealthfront or some other kind of service that helps you to have a diversified portfolio, and just invest the money you make from DJing over a long period of time. So DJ for the next 20 years on the weekends, build a good little side business doing it, save all that money, and put it in your retirement account. And that can be a great way to build wealth over a long period of time, right? I mean, I think that is actually no more complicated than that. And I think for a lot of people, that would be a path to happiness. I mean, so it all comes down to self-awareness about what you really want. I mean, I think you need to be honest with yourself about what you really want out of life. If you really enjoy DJing weddings, and you're content in your 9 to 5, then I think that's great. I mean, it doesn't have to be super scalable. You can kind of over time, what you're going to find is you're going to get more and more referrals, so you don't have to spend any money on marketing, and you probably can work as many weekends DJing weddings as you want. And I would just encourage you to take that money, save it, and use your 9 to 5 to pay your bills. I think that is a strategy that would work. Another strategy that would work is to say, hey, but David, I really want to go out and build a multi-million-dollar business and really ramp up my lifestyle and this kind of stuff. Well, then I think you need to go all in on building a business that's scalable. I mean, if that's what you want, then that's the only way I know to go out and find it. And I probably would not quit my 9 to 5 yet. And I would kind of take my advice of going out, building some skills, maybe building some skills around the new AI tools and new AI world. Start renting those skills out to businesses that need them for consulting money. Start to get some insight into business, some insight into maybe my customers' businesses, and then use that insight ultimately to build a scalable business that I believed I had a unique value proposition in because of my experience and my insight into a business. So that would be kind of my next steps if I wanted to go to the actually building a business approach that was going to grow into something meaningful and scale over time. But you got to be self-aware and honest with yourself about what you want. I mean, only you know that. And I think the more honest you can be with yourself, the better off you're going to be. And so there's no one size fits all answer to this, or one right answer. It's whatever the right answer is for you. And that comes down to being honest with yourself about what your truth is. And I think that the sooner that you can be honest with yourself, the sooner you can go out and start living the life that is your truth. And there's no easy path. There's only the right path for you. And So I just encourage you to really be honest with yourself about whatever that is. And just so you know, like, if you really want to go out and build something big, but you're not doing it because you're scared, then I really would encourage you to take the risk and go out and do something big, because I think that at the end of your life, you will. Or you're more likely to regret not trying something that you really wanted to do than you are, trying something and failing at it. So, I know that, at least for me, that's a big driver. So if that's your truth, then, go out and do something big. You got to think bigger than your DJ side hustle. But if you're but if that's not you, then that's awesome too. And I think that you'd be much happier just admitting that, continuing your 9 to 5 and doing your DJ stuff for fun. And just remember, I would gamify that and say, like, how much money can I make from this to save to put in my kind of long-term index fund retirement accounts, and watch that grow over time and have that be your game. And that's completely cool. And I think that's actually probably good advice for a lot of people, honestly. But you got to know, you just got to know where you sit and what you really want, what's really going to make you happy, what you really want your life to look like, and then go with that, whatever that is. But I wish I knew you well enough to be able to tell you what the right answer was for you. But at the end of the day, that's your responsibility to really dig down and figure it out. But it comes down to that self-awareness. And I wish you the best of luck in figuring it out, and hope you get to that answer for yourself soon. Okay, Michael, what's next? John's Culinary Chronicles. If you had a list of service that you desperately needed to outreach/freelance, what would it be? I don't know that I have a great answer for you. I guess my read on this question is that you're asking what I want to is that your read on it, Michael? He wants to know what service I actually need. Is that what your take on it is?
My take is that he's wondering what services are best for freelancers.
Like what services you should be selling as a
Correct.
freelancer.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm actually doing a video on this. Like I said, in the next few weeks, I think I would do something that was AI related. What I think is going to happen, like if I was a freelancer or like building like a agency, even though I do not want to build an agency business, I would actually not encourage you to build an agency business, except that if you want to use it as a stepping stone to learn business, then I think that's a good stepping stone, but it should not be your end game, in my personal opinion. Although there are a lot of people that disagree with me, that's just my personal opinion. But what you're going to see happening, you already see it happening, is you have like all these AI tools that are coming out. Like you just have this image thing from OpenAI. Like every week they're coming out. Businesses are not able to adapt quick enough to all of it, right? And a lot of times these businesses struggle to implement this, or to kind of figure out ways to enhance their business with these tools. And so what I would be doing if I was a freelancer or I was a contractor is I would be figuring out ways to use these tools in a really effective way that could help larger businesses, and then sell my services to help them to implement that, more or less. And that the nice thing is that can take many different forms, because it can take, like within marketing, there are so many ways of doing it. Think about how many big companies have marketing teams that are probably building images for their ads, for instance. So like if you became really good at quickly and cheaply creating ads using AI tools, then you could probably rent your services to companies to help them to implement that in their own teams, right? Like that would be an example where I think that there would be a lot of demand if you were really good at that, and you could sell your services. One idea that I kind of came up with in the video is now creating websites is going to be so much quicker, easier, and cheaper because of this stuff. So like if you figured out a way to build basic websites using AI in like 10 minutes, and doing that at scale, then like there's so many new LLCs that are formed all the time, right? That oftentimes just need a basic holder website. And maybe you could sell your services of, hey, I'll do this for a couple $100, and you have a system that allows you to do that over and over again. whether that be going out and creating infographics for people for SEO purposes. That's something that a lot of people still need. It gets a lot of backlinks and this kind of stuff. It used to be so painful and thousands of dollars to build these. If you became really good at going and using AI to collect the data to then actually turn into to infographics that you could sell or kind of prove out your value to companies and being able to iterate on it quicker, then it's the kind of thing that you're likely to get hired around. And like one strategy that I think would work for this that I've seen, I've actually it's actually worked on me a couple of times, because I'll get sucked into it. But you create something for a company, maybe on spec or kind of for free, and then hit them up on LinkedIn, say, hey, I just did this for you. It's something that I think we could do a lot more of. If you're interested, let me know. And sometimes you'll find somebody that's interested to say, hey, yeah, I've been wanting to do this. Like maybe it's creating better clips for somebody's Instagram, some company's Instagram page, right? I mean, and saying, hey, I did this quick clip. I could do 20 of these a day. Is this something that you'd be interested in? And you may be surprised what kind of response you get. But there are lots of little niches within this that I think are worthy of exploring. And ultimately, it's going to come down to like what you're good at, what you're interested in naturally, and then being able to articulate how you're able to offer value to people. And I would use Upwork, I would use LinkedIn as ways to go out and find customers to do it. And I think that's a smart way to start to build your skills that ultimately can lead you to insight that will allow you to go out and build a business. And I think that's how I would start if I was in my early 20s and starting today. Most likely, I think it's a smart way to get started. Adam Fowler. I'm working out on building a custom ERP system. Oh, I'm sorry, for my small manufacturing business. What advice do you have for building an ERP, and how did you build yours? Well, my first advice is for most people, I would not build a custom ERP system, if I'm honest with you. I've never used it, but I would at least take a look at something like fulfill.io. And there's so many that are a lot more flexible now and really can do whatever you need. And I think you're for most people, not for everybody, I'm an exception to this. For most people, you're way better off finding a existing ERP and making it work for you. And if I were starting today, honestly, that's what I would do. Like, there's no doubt in my mind, knowing what I know today, that is what I would do. And also being in 2025, that's what I would do. When I started this in 2012, it's a different landscape. A lot of the things that we take for granted today were not so easily accessible, even 12 years ago, right? So you have to remember when I started it and I built my own custom ERP system, it was out of a need at the time that honestly has shifted today. So, I don't know if I were starting today, if I would build a custom ERP system. But let's say you're not going to take my advice and you're going to do it. Then I think you as the owner really need to take charge of it, and it's not something you can outsource. And I think that's a mistake a lot of people made. One of the reasons why I was able to build it is because I was basically what I would call the architect of that system, right? Because I understand our business very well. And I was able to architect that system myself. And even to this day, I still take a lot of responsibility related to that. And I view it as an extension of it's basically like our business operating system is how I kind of view it. And so me as the entrepreneur, I take the responsibility for it. And so I think you have to start with that. You have to start with that willingness to take ownership of it and of the development of it. And then the next thing I would say is start very simple. I think a lot of like one of my problems with a lot of these ERP systems that you buy off the shelf or whatever is they're actually way more complex than they need, and they're not super user friendly. And so I would just start very simple use case and only build features that were less simple when you had a real need for it, and kind of use simple tools as a way, or build simple tools as a way to kind of test what works and what doesn't, and then you can iterate and build on it over time. Um, and the nice thing is, like, ironically, I give the advice that I would use a third party, and I really would if I was starting. But now with AI, and the tools related to it, it's actually would be easier and cheaper than ever to build your own custom built ERP. But you just have to make sure that you really stay organized and that you understand how it's being organized, and that you don't let it get more complicated than it needs to be for your use case. And I think that, like, if you really have like a fairly simple manufacturing process, that you have fairly simple needs for your ERP system, then building it on your own is a viable option. And the challenge is going to be not to get sucked into making it more complicated than it needs to be. It needs to stay simple and functional and usable, and not try to grow into something that it shouldn't be or isn't. And I think that the tendency for these things, and I've made this mistake, is to make them more complicated than they need to be. And when you get to that point, they become a lot more tricky to maintain. So I don't know. I mean, I definitely would consider using a third party if I was starting today. But at the same time, I will be honest and say that there's no way I could have built the business that I have today if I had not gone the custom ERP route. So I'm sympathetic to there being use cases and needs for it sometimes. But I would definitely only do it if it's something you really understand well. If it's something that, like, you have no programming experience, no understanding how systems work and this kind of stuff, then I would highly recommend you stay away from it. But if you do have the understanding of that stuff, then you just got to be prepared to be your own kind of project manager for a long period of time, because that's the only way you're probably going to get something that actually works that you want. But it's complicated subject, actually. And when I got into the business, I told this story a couple of times, but it's I had no idea what an ERP system was when I got into business in 2012, honestly. And I bought a kind of small dying industrial supply company, and that when I walked in on day one, I was like, oh, okay, how do I see the financials of this business? And they printed out on this kind of blue and green printer paper, one of these printers that goes back and forth. Forget what kind of print, maybe dot matrix printer or whatever it's called. And that was like how you got to see your financial reporting. And I was like, wow, this is very antiquated and crazy. It was like on a DOS based system called Profit 21, and that was an ERP system. And I was like, oh, okay, I can't run a business this way. And I ultimately I ported that over to NetSuite, which is a big popular ERP system. Had a very bad experience. It cost me $450,000 that I did not have to do it, and we were not even fully integrated properly. It was a big disaster. And that was ultimately the genesis, actually, for what led me, when I was kind of doing filter buy, to building our own custom ERP system, because I had had such a bad experience with NetSuite, and nothing was ever working in the way that it needed to. And we had all of these problems. And so that pain is what led me to building the custom ERP system that we have today. So I'm very sympathetic to, not wanting to use these out of the box solutions, but for most people, it's the right answer. And that's what I'd recommend for you. So, okay. What's next? How's it going, David? I work for a family business that is growing into what I colloquially call a large small business. Are there any services/tools that you've utilized to help with healthy growth? Oh, that's it. With healthy growth. Okay. No punctuation. I see. You don't like your periods. Um, the I mean, it just depends on the business. That's why it's like I don't want to give you like unhelpful generic advice, because like there is no kind of there's no one way in this kind of case, right? But like if I'm going to go to the kind of root cause analysis or the first principles thinking, it all starts with cash flow. I mean, you have to understand your cash flow, right? I mean, and I think so many people get stuck in growth, or they start chasing growth, but they realize that it has that growth often comes at the expense of cash flow, meaning the faster you grow, the worse your cash flow is. And so a lot of times I see businesses that, are growing really fast, and they're hemorrhaging cash, right? And they're like, oh, we can't fund anything. And that gets ultimately leads them to getting into trouble. And so making sure that your growth is consistent with what your cash flow allows is super important. And without knowing your business or your industry or anything, I know nothing about the cash flow dynamics that you're potentially dealing with, but that's something that, like if you're going to think about healthy growth, then you need to understand your cash flow and what that growth is going to do to your cash flow. So if you haven't done that analysis, then that's where you got to start. So I mean, there's nothing else really matters, because cash flow is ultimately oxygen for a business, right? Like if you don't have cash, you can't live. I mean, just like if you don't have oxygen, you can't breathe. And so understanding cash flow and how that changes as you grow is step number one. And so if I was going to focus on anything, it would be that. And then after that, like once I became comfortable with that, I would be saying, okay, well, you know, what is the time horizon that I'm playing for, right? The longer that you can defer the reward, the better off you're going to be. So the more you're able to reinvest that cash that you're hopefully making because you have very good cash flow, the quicker you're going to be able to grow. And that oftentimes is is the opposite of being able to take money out of the business. So like the more you want to grow, then the more cash flow you need to generate, the more cash flow you need to invest which means the less you're going to be able to actually take out of that business. And so it's like, how long are you willing to kind of underpay yourself or distribute earnings to yourself to be able to allow you to continue to grow the business. And if you're in a family business and you have partners and this kind of stuff, the problem is it doesn't matter only what you want. It's going to matter what all of your family members want, right? Or all of your partners in that business, or if you have investors, what they want, right? So you have to take all of that into account, and you have to make sure that you're aligned with the same and have the same goals and the same targets and the same needs. And that sometimes is very tricky, right? But I think you need to have that honest conversation with everybody. Everybody's on the same page. You set the expectations right. Because growth very rarely is going to come without capital or without cash, and that's just reality. There's some unicorn. I don't mean unicorn in the tech space, just like unicorn, fictional businesses that are able to grow at scale without having any capital or cash. But that's pretty rare, pretty unlikely, and I wouldn't hold my breath on you finding one. So the reality is that you're going to have to be willing to give up something if you want to grow, and oftentimes that means that your ability to actually pay yourself and take money out of the business is going to be inversely proportional to the rate at which you want to grow. And I think that a lot of times people live in these kind of la worlds when they have this business and they think, oh, we're making all this money. I'm just going to pay myself all this money. And then they are not taking into account all the capital that it takes to actually reinvest and grow that business. And, I think, having realistic expectations around that and really understanding that for your business is super critical. So, based on your question, those are the things that I would be thinking about and I would be focused on if I were in your shoes. Okay, we'll do one more, Michael. How do you approach risk management in your entrepreneurial ventures? I think that it comes down to knowing yourself first and foremost, right? I mean, it really, we were just talking about this in the last thing. It's like you have to understand what you're willing to give up before you can understand what you're willing to risk at the end of the day. And I think that it really comes down to understanding your numbers. I ironically, objectively take a lot of risk, but also am incredibly risk averse. And I think that like having both of those things be true is super has been super important for me. In that, like, I'm very aggressive when I see an opportunity that I believe in, that I want to go out and pursue. But I'm very conscious of making sure that I, you know, keep my risk in a manageable at a manageable level, because, like, if you get knocked out, or you get taken out, then it's very hard to recover, right? And you don't want to put yourself in that position. And so I think, for me, it comes down to being very aggressive when there are opportunities that I really believe in, but making sure I never put myself in a position to overextend myself, more or less. And it's a hard balance to do at times. I mean, and there are certainly times where you get in trouble and you think, oh, I really shouldn't have done that. And you feel the pain. But the key is to be able to wake up and fight another day tomorrow. And that's how, I ultimately think about it. And, I think that a lot of times people early on are too risk averse, because they're just fearful and driven by fear, and that's something that they that ultimately kind of dominates their thinking. And, like, early on is when you actually want to take the most risk, because you have the least to lose. I mean, the trick is, as you get bigger, to continue to take that risk when you have more to lose, right? I mean, and it's a much harder thing to do, and it's why you see a lot of bigger companies, or people that get to, like, a certain points, stop growing, and it's really because they are super risk averse. And maybe for them that makes sense, but I think that it's oftentimes what holds a lot of people back. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I would leave it, is the balance between, um, being aggressive when you really see an opportunity, but keeping your risk at a manageable level. So that is where I would leave it. I really appreciate everybody who showed up, and we have a number of people on TikTok. That was kind of cool. So, as Michael says, hit the like button for weekly live streams. Really appreciate you showing up. Hope you have a great week. I cannot believe that we are ending the first quarter of, 2025. Time absolutely flies, and I'm constantly reminded of that. But anyways, hope you have a great week ahead, and I will see you next week.